I am the BookTube Goddess, the #1 drag queen booktuber on YouTube. And I have a special treat with me today. I have the star of Camp Wanakiki Season 1 and new to BookTube, C'est Kevvie. Hi, Kevvie.
Yay! Hi, it's me, Kevvie.
Is this really happening? Oh my god.
That's so funny. I didn't realize you were on Camp Wanakiki until I started searching for you, and it's like, wait a minute. I saw that show when it came out, and there you were.
Yeah. I was thinking, as I was painting, BookTube Goddess kind of reminds me of Camp Counselor Ruthie.
Oh!
Yeah. I was like, I wonder if she'll know who that is. But she do.
I do. I will take that as a compliment. Okay, so what we're doing is, since we're both on BookTube now, I took a book from Kevvie's TBR to review on her channel, and she took a book on my TBR to review on my channel, which is what we're doing here. And I'll have a link below to Kevvie's. So
Yay!
The video, no, I think you picked the book, Pride and Premeditation, when you saw that.
Yeah, you had it narrowed down to a couple, and then
right.
Yeah.
And I know you are a huge fan of mysteries. What is it about mysteries that you love so much?
I don't know. I really love looking for clues and trying to figure out who did it. And I don't know. I've always enjoyed that, and it's so much fun to me to get into that space. And I love the aura and the feeling of those. Oh, and of course, when you get it right, it feels so good.
Now, do you prefer retro mysteries or contemporary, or doesn't it matter?
I typically go towards the more classic mysteries.
Right.
I haven't read a whole lot of contemporary mystery yet.
Well, you read one now because Pride and Premeditation is a new release. Now, have you seen much of Pride and Prejudice? Are you a big fan of Pride and Prejudice, or?
Pride and Prejudice has never really been on my radar a whole lot. It's I'm pretty sure I read it for school at some point, but other than that, I don't know a whole lot about it.
What the author Tirzah Price did was she plucked all the characters from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and she put them together in a new situation in Pride and Premeditation, so this is not a retelling of Pride and Prejudice. It's taking the characters and putting them in a totally new situation, because Elizabeth Bennet is, instead of a daughter whose parents are looking out for her to get married because women are chattel back then, she's actually helps her father out at a law firm that the father now runs, called Bennett and Associates, or no, that's not it. But whatever that law firm is, she's helping him out. And the father does not want his daughter to be a barrister or to be a partner in the firm. So he gives her a challenge. He says, well, if you can bring in your own case, maybe I'll think about it. And of course, she goes out and she finds a murder.
I love the idea of this book, and the idea of taking characters that are so well established and putting them in an entirely new sort of story, a new genre, even. Yeah.
Now, since I am familiar with Pride and Prejudice, the thing that happened for me was, because I'm really familiar with the characters, like the murder suspect is Bingsley, and we know him to be the love interest of her sister Jane, yada, 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 in Pride and Prejudice. But all the characteristics, or all the character flaws and, what's the word I'm trying to say? Personalities of the characters are carried through into Pride and Premeditation. So you kind of know who's evil and who's not. I don't know if that was an issue for you, but I'm like, here's Mr. Collins trying to take over the father's business. Well, we know what that's about. And some of the other characters, I see them coming in and I'm like,
Yeah, I did go on Spark Notes to review who all the different characters were, just so I could have a bit of a grounding point to work from.
Well, what's interesting was the murder victim, Mr. Hurst, is a very, very minor character in Pride and Prejudice. So he's Bingsley's brother-in-law. And there's none of that conflict between them in the book. So that was something new added. Also different was adding people of color in this world. Like Charlotte her mother was West Indies, and that street urchin was a person of color. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh, definitely.
I have to admit that I listened to the audiobook. I didn't actually read the book. And I love the audiobook because the narrator had sort of that Downton Abbey snooty English accent. And I thought it was a lot of fun, but it didn't seem to be that deep to me when it comes to the mystery. I don't know how that felt for you because you're such a aficionado of mysteries.
Well, I used the ebook, so I did read it.
Right.
But I felt well, before I say anything, how are we handling spoilers and stuff?
Let's try not to do spoilers. So let's see if we can work around it. See how that goes.
Okay. So without saying who, I was able to figure out who did it fairly quickly, just because I have that background.
Right.
So, like, my thought process was like, we know that the prime suspects are the people in Bingley and the people around Bingley.
Right.
So who else has been introduced into the story that isn't part of Bennet family? And that's your suspect list.
Yeah, and there aren't that many suspects, I guess, now that I think about it.
Right.
So, Kevvie, did you enjoy the book overall?
Kinda. So the mystery was fun. I enjoyed the mystery, but this did still very much read like romance to me, and it was like very heavy-handed with that, and romance is not my cup of soup. So, like, whenever there'd be like the Elizabeth and Darcy scenes, I'm like, ugh, okay, get down with it. And also, the chapters were pretty long. I mean, it's a long, for me, it's a long book. I'm used to Agatha Christie, which is rarely over 300 pages. And so for me, this book was a lot harder to get through. I felt like I wasn't making as much progress as I read because there was just comparatively longer.
Yeah, I guess since I listened to it as an audiobook, I don't have a good sense of actually how long it was. How many pages was it? Do you remember?
It was 368 pages.
Okay. So I guess that's...
So yeah, that's a lot for little old me.
Okay. Well, I think cozy mysteries are the general mysteries, because my father would read them a lot. They were like little skinny books compared to like epic fantasies, which are like, 1,000 pages.
I could never.
Yeah, I also am not a huge romance reader because a lot of the plot points in romance novels I don't get, and I've never really found a romance book that I really, really liked. But at least for me, at least as I read Pride and Premeditation, at least that was a subplot. Yes, there was a lot of like, oh, Darcy is near me, my fluttering heart, that type of stuff. But it didn't overtake it for me, at least, because it was still focused on the mystery. But what my favorite part of reading this book or listening to this book was the voice of the writing. I really liked Lizzie's voice because it seemed like it was maybe it was a little bit hokey, but a Regency era woman trying to struggle to become her own woman in this society that really oppresses women. I kind of appreciated that. I thought it was fun. Anyway.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed how the character wrote, spoke, and thought. I did like Lizzie quite a bit.
Did you have any favorite characters in Pride and Premeditation?
Ooh, let's see. I really like Charlotte because she was a person of color.
Yeah.
So so I appreciated that. I'm like, yay, diversity. I liked Jane. She seemed to be like supportive and also like a voice of reason.
Mm-hmm.
She was really nice. I like that. Like she offered like Lizzie her dress and all that.
Yeah, I have to agree. I liked Jane a lot, and I liked Lady DeBurge, even though she's a little out there. But she was fun to read. I really did not like Mrs. Bennet, and I didn't like her in Pride and Prejudice, but I especially didn't like her in Pride and Premeditation, because the mother thing, it was just so over the top, almost like a caricature. But I did like the father, even though he was a little stuffy.
A little bit. Yeah, I agree. The mom was a bit much, a lot much, and yeah, the dad, he was he seemed very supportive and appreciative of his daughter's wants and needs.
I totally agree. Okay, well, I personally like this book. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, and it gets my blessing, which means that I recommend this book for anyone who is interested in either, I would say, more of a Jane Austen retelling in a totally different situation. Maybe not so much as a murder mystery, because especially if you know Pride and Prejudice, it's not that difficult to figure out the mystery. I don't know if you would recommend it, Kevvie.
I think I would recommend it to a particular audience.
Right.
Like, if you're into Pride and Prejudice, which like millions of people are, like if you like that kind of story, you will like this. And if you like medium-length mysteries.
And I should mention, this was actually marketed as young adult. So the audience is actually between 14 to 18 years old. I don't know if you knew that, but personally, I think they should have marketed it as just a regular adult book, because there are so, like you said, there are so many fans of Pride and Prejudice that it could probably find a larger audience if it just wasn't restricted to that young adult category. But that's another topic. That
right. I mean, how many kids, how many young people read Pride and Prejudice?
Right.
It's a honker of a book. Like, it's not easy.
Right.
Although one of the twists did get me.
At the end, the very end.
How what was her name? The woman in charge of it all.
Yeah, Lady DeBurge.
Yeah, her. I didn't realize that she was the mastermind. I knew the other two were part of it.
I kind of figured that part out because Mr. Collins in the Pride and Prejudice books always referring to his benefactress, who was like in charge of everything. So I thought, I was so satisfied that Mr. Collins was part of it, because I didn't think it was going to happen, because it didn't seem set up that way at the beginning. It sort of just came out of the blue. Of course, immediately when Wickham showed up, sort of you knew right away that something was up with this character who was
Right.
following Lizzie around.
I was just gonna say, with Collins, he seemed the most likely suspect, but my only issue was I didn't know how he would have connected to the Bingley family.
Right, because
That's
it wasn't
the only
apparent.
thing that threw me off of him at all.
Yeah, I agree. It certainly wasn't apparent from probably up through 2/3 of the book for me. It's like, it'd be nice if it was Collins, but he doesn't have anything to do with anything except knowing Lady de
Right.
Burgh. So that was my collab with C'est Kevvie. Wasn't she wonderful? And don't forget to check out the video on her channel down below. And while you're at it, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to hit that notification bell. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.